it's difficult to probably gauge which way the index would move in the short term, but let's give you a 1 month or a 2 month perspective based on the kind of earnings estimates that you have. You think a possibility of 5,700 is higher than a 4,900?
Without taking a specific call, I think the expectations from earnings are positive. The reports that we are seeing are good, and as long as we don't have any major global concerns, I think things should look good 3 to 6 months from now. To answer the question, I think we really have to look to earnings to see if they justify some of the valuations we are seeing.
All right, keep that in mind. Thanks very much, Radhika, for joining us. I appreciate your time this afternoon. I just thought of something. I'm sorry.
All right, not a problem.
It happens.
Interesting stock idea that I see is metals. I mean, maybe on a long-term story, Tata Steel, yes, but broadly, we just did this story today about the steel secretary saying that the price rise in steel is unjustified. They're meeting the steel companies on April 22nd, and there could be a reaction to that. You think that's a possibility?
I think it is a possibility. I think if you have to look at steel companies, given the volatility in steel prices, it's important that you look at a company whose earnings are at least in part hedged against a major rise in steel prices. I think that becomes very important given the kind of environment we are in. That's why earlier I said, Tata Steel makes sense because these guys have gone into a business which is contract based. So as you see a fall in steel prices, every couple of months, their business suffers but doesn't suffer as much because that's relatively stable and the prices are more fixed. So I think when you look at something like steel or any sort of commodity business, you have to look at hedging your bets against the steel environment because it's hard to say what the regulations will bear out.
Of course, in today's session, we heard the management is pretty active, up about 2%. What about the pharma space? Nothing is really being talked about for that sector. It's gone a bit dud, really, after the budget.
Yeah, pharma got a lot of love for the last 3 months. It's been quiet. I think we are less excited about the pharma space than we were maybe a month ago, but still there are interesting opportunities. Pharma is divided into sort of 2 segments. The generic segment is the one that's looking interesting because there's about 20% of the patents, in developed markets that are going to expire. So that gives domestic guys some good opportunities. Lupin remains in very good shape. I know it's been a market favorite. It remains in good shape because with pharma, a big concern is, am I going to get into regulatory trouble with the FDA, which we've seen a lot of guys get into trouble. Lupin has been one who's actively resolved its issues and not had an impact on its production and its operations. So I think Lupin is in a very good space as far as pharma stocks are concerned. And even on a valuations basis, it looks like a better buy than something like a Cipla, which is much more expensive. Talking on consumer, we're not very excited about the large cap consumer space. Guys like ITC, guys like McDowell, guys like Unilever have been beaten a lot. They remain on the expensive side, and from a business perspective, they're losing market share to smaller guys, whether it be Godrej Consumer, whether it be Dabur, etc. So if you have to look at consumer, which is a sector a lot of people are excited about, I think the mid-cap sector is a better place to look than the large cap one.
And what would you look in the mid-caps?
Something like a Dabur. I think Dabur has done well. It's tried to differentiate its products a little bit more, as much as you can differentiate within the consumer product space. Back, end of 2008, the tourism and hotel sector was hit pretty badly, partly on account of the recession, partly on account of some domestic security concerns. So it's come back in 2009. A lot of smaller players in this space. So we have to see how they manage their costs. That's really the critical factor, and how they, build up the expansion.
We head into a break, but before that, let me take a moment to thank Harindra for joining us this afternoon. Harindra, thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Take that break, and here are some more market opinions. Couple of these energy stocks, anything that you're liking there?
Mentioned earlier, MRPL, like ONGC among the energy pack, if anything, they have a stronger domestic production story.
No, but when you talk about energy, essentially from the power sector.
Oh, from the power sector. Within the power sector, I think Tata Power has good prospects. It was beaten down Jan, Feb, March, a little bit unfairly, I think, and has the potential to come back, because the beating down was on account of an accounting restructuring. So, that is something that management has resolved. They have been pretty committed to sort of reevaluating the mines, reevaluating the businesses pretty regularly. So Tata Power is an interesting one at the back.
We're seeing a lot of traction, a lot of boost being given to this space by the government also, especially those engineering giants, and BHEL getting a boost from the government. Right. Any particular counters that you like in terms of a business outlook and a possible investment opportunity? I
think, we are a little bit bearish in the capital goods space in general. There has been some positive news because industrial production numbers have been better. We think most of the stocks in the space are overvalued. If I had to pick anything, Crompton Greaves is relatively better placed, within that segment. Again, a strong commitment to cutting costs, good Q3 results, 10% plus pickup in sort of margins. So Crompton Greaves is good and sort of diversified their businesses into industrials, switches, various things, and seen pickup in those businesses.
All right, just stay on with us. In fact, Jitendra, stay on as well. All right, buy Dabur India is what Radhika says. All right, 3 minutes left for the market to close. So let's start wrapping up the market.
In the meanwhile, Citigroup MD and Head of Research Aditya Narain believes market valuations haven't peaked yet and says there is still room for valuations to be on the higher side. In conversation with ET Now's executive editor, Andy, could weaken further.